Folks, I've got some exciting news. Yes, I found a use for the vanishing point filter. I know I'm saying it somewhat facetiously. The vanishing point filter is a good filter. Very, very powerful stuff. It's just not something that I found that I used a whole lot in Photoshop. But recently I had a photo that I was working on, and I was very, very thankful it was there. And I think that's the underlying theme of what it taught me, is that even if it's not something you use every day, when you do need to use it, you're going to be really thankful that the tool is there. So let's take a look here. I'm going to grab my clone stamp tool, and I'll zoom in toward the bottom of the building here. And you can see there's a crane in the reflection here. So we want to remove this. Well, I would normally take my clone stamp, and I'd create a blank layer. So I do all my work on a separate layer. And I would sample probably from a window higher, because if I sample this window right here, it's just going to give me an exact duplicate. It's going to look a little bit fake. So I try to sample from one up here, right? And then that way, when I clone it down here, it won't look quite as fake. So I'm going to start to paint, and you're going to see a problem here. And the problem is that I'm really bad with the clone stamp tool. No, that's not the problem. The problem is that, see how it's smaller than the window above it? That's because of perspective. It recedes into the distance and gets smaller. And the clone stamp's not taking that into account. So what we can do here is use vanishing point for that. We can clone in perspective. Let's go to filter. We'll go to vanishing point. Inside vanishing point, the very first thing that you're going to need to do here is create a perspective grid. I just deleted the one that I had because I made one before, but you need to create a perspective grid. You need to tell Photoshop what the perspective of this building is. So in order to do that, you use the create plane tool. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here, and I'm not going to try to do it around the whole building. I'm going to do it around part of the building. So I'll click in some type of a corner point, and then it's like a little rubber band. It follows you around. Okay, so I'll click in that corner point, and then I'm going to zoom in so you can see it a little closer, and then I'll click in another corner point right here. And then I'll follow the perspective down just to make sure that I match it pretty well. If you want to zoom in on the fly, just hit the letter X, and I'll click right down here, and then I'll move it over to this point, and I'll click with the perspective plane tool right about there. All right, and that gives me a good plane to build off of. The one problem I have is it's only over part of the building. So to make it bigger, just drag these handles out to the side, and you can see that Photoshop keeps that perspective because you've already defined it. All right, and we'll drag that guy down. Now we're going to use the clone stamp tool. And cloning works pretty much the same way it does inside the toolbox. So we'll zoom in down here onto the crane, grab my clone stamp tool, and just hold down the Option key on the Mac, Alt key on PC, and click in a corner point. The one advantage this has is it does give you a preview. See that preview, that brush preview? So now I can really fit this right into place here and try to match it up perfectly. And that looks pretty good. So I'm going to click and start painting. All right. Right now I'm just painting just like I would with a brush, and you'll see that it is pulling that window from up top. So now I've made it disappear from there. Now we're going to move over to the other side here, and we've got the same problem. Now you can just click and start painting again, but as you have a large object, sometimes it's going to be a little hard to get that plane perfect. So what I do here is I'm just going to Alt click, Option click, and select a different area that's closer to what I want to fix. So let's go ahead and we'll click right up here. All right, and then I'll bring this down. I'll fit it into place. And there we go, just like that. I will paint it away from that window, and you can Option click again if you'd like, or just continue to paint down, and we'll fit it right over this window right here, almost there. And I'll just paint downward, and you can see that as I move it through to the right side of the photo, you can see all of that disappears. Okay, so now when we click OK, there's one last thing to finish up here, and that is you can see we did our work on our separate layer, right? All right, and that means that all my changes are on its own layer. So if I need to, I can come in here and maybe just grab my dodge and burn tools, and if I need to, just at a very, very low exposure, I'd come in here and just kind of burn in a few of these edges just because of the lighting and the differences that might have seen up here that you'll see down here. And that's the benefit of doing all that work on its own layer. So you can drop the opacity if you need to, but there you have it, the vanishing point tool. And what I think is a very, very real world example. You know, anything that has to do with buildings or architecture or things like that, it's a perfect filter for it, because your perspective will be very consistent throughout, and you can really do some nice clone work inside of those photos with it. And it makes it a lot easier as well. So hope you enjoyed this tutorial and my recent breakthrough with Vanishing Point. And that said, take care, and I'll see you again next time.